Hello, BookTube, and welcome to your Daily Penguin. This is our tour through my penguin wall, and we never know what we're going to find. We never know. Last time it was a small handful of Graham Greene, after I had confidently pronounced that I'd seen all the Graham Greene that I had. And I had a number of emails, a number of comments from people saying, what about this Graham Greene? What about that Graham Greene? And I had to tell everybody in email, it could be that all of Graham Greene would show up. How do I know what's coming? Obviously, I don't. But there's no rhyme or reason in the strata that we are exploring nowadays. I don't know if that's going to change. But today, for instance, is a standalone thing, and it's something that I believe I got. I believe I hauled this on this channel. This edition is from 2016. It could be that this. I'm pretty certain that I opened this on camera. This is the selected poems and prose of Percy, Bysshe, Shelley. Nice big thick volume that is edited by Jack Donovan and Cian Duffy, and has it has a a little review that I stuck in there. This is from the Times Literary Supplement, I believe, or the London Review of Books. One of the things that I've commented on about these, this is the London Review of Books. One of the things I've commented on about these volumes is that they will often give a literary editor a chance to just tap somebody on the shoulder. Okay, well, you want to write about Shelley. There's no new biography. There's no particular new reason to, but there is a new Penguin volume. So write about that. It'll give you the excuse to write about Shelley, and the piece is really good. So I imagine I will just fill this, since I don't have a hardcover collected Shelley. I have the Modern Library, or the Everyman's Library, selected Shelley and Keats that I can stick reviews in, but other than that, it's just this for Shelley, and this is everything. This is pretty much everything. There's a stress here on I mean, this is all the verse, but there's a stress here on the prose, and I worry sometimes that the reason for that is because Shelley is less and less taught. He was, after all, a cis-het white man. And they tend not to get taught in schools anymore, and by the time 20 more years are over, they won't get taught at all, except in specialty classes that'll come with trigger warnings. He's also the most romantic of the romantic poets. He's not just in terms of his personal life, although that was extremely piquant. He was enabled to do the sort of puffy shirt wandering and moping because he came into money. Classic romantic gambit. He came into a large sum of money that freed him from such worldly concerns. One of the worldly concerns that he was freed from was the need to please an audience. His poetry is quite the thing. It is quite the thing. It's formalistic and rhetorically brilliant. It's elusive as all get out. It's extremely poetically and mythologically and literarily elusive and literate to the extent that Shelley often lamented in his lifetime, and his publisher certainly lamented, that the number of people who can be expected to even understand this stuff, much less buy it, is extremely small. And that was absolutely true, and it ate at Shelley, because in addition to taking up a romantic relationship with a young woman who was at the time pregnant by Lord Byron, Shelley was also a worshipful acolyte and friend of Lord Byron, and also a professional rival and worshipper who wrote to friends and told them in letters, the only ambition I have is unattainable. I want to be the equal or better of Lord Byron at the poetry of the age, and it's not possible. And I know that. And I don't know whether it was possible or not. Shelley died very, very young. It's possible. Who knows what he would have been able to do. But it was definitely true in his lifetime that he couldn't sell a poem with a farthing attached to it, whereas Byron couldn't help but sell. And there's a very good reason for that. And it's not what a cynic might think, that the reason for that is because Shelley was a hairdo. He was an open shirt. He wasn't really known, except for the scandal of his personal life, leaving his wife and children to take up an affair, having the wife commit suicide, being denied by a British court, by an English court, custody of his own children. Unheard of. And the court specified that they weren't awarding him custody of his own children because of the moral example of his life. Aside from that, though, he wasn't known for his poetry. The poetry could barely sell half of an edition, half of a printing, whereas Byron sold out everything. And the cynical response is to say, well, that's because Byron was bad. And that has tended to be the sort of the judgment of posterity down to today. That Byron, if Shelley is, I believe, less and less read in introductory literary courses, because the profession feels like they need to apologize for his existence ahead of time. If he is less and less read, I don't think Byron's read at all. And that's a terrible shame. And the literary establishment, the academic establishment, has to justify that somehow. They're the last people who are ever going to say that they are following a fad. As far as they're concerned, fads don't exist, right? What might that be? So instead of admitting that, they're going to have to denigrate the person that the fad says they can no longer teach. And so Byron has been denigrated. But Shelley was right. You can't have it both ways. You can't both ascribe to Shelley an amazing literary appreciation and a rhetorical awareness and insight far beyond his years and far beyond his age, sufficient to warrant studying him now, and also say that when he said that Byron was his superior in every way, he was wrong. He was just mistaken. You can't have it both ways. He was right. Byron had the same amount of elusivity. He had the same amount of rhetorical ability. He had the same amount of power when his verse was powerful, as it often is. But he also made it readable. And a lot of Shelley is not. A lot of Shelley doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I know that's small beer compared to Keats, who perfected the art of not making a whole lot of sense, but still. Byron always makes sense. He's always good to read, in addition to brilliant. He's always good to read. In other words, a literary furniture packer. A furniture packer with a wife that he's loved for 35 years, 4 kids that he has done his best by, 2 in the graveyard, who has always, thanks to a teacher early in his life, he has always had a love of reading and has a modest collection of books at his home, always daydreams on his walk home from work goes by the bookshop and daydreams, there is a volume I would like, talks with the bookshop owner, that sort of thing. That reader exists today, and that reader existed in Byron's day, and that reader loved Byron, loved his poetry. I didn't know what to make of Shelley. Shelley wasn't writing for that person. I don't know who Shelley was writing for. Certainly, his frequent hints that he was writing for Byron couldn't be less true. Although Byron appreciated his work, I don't think he ever felt threatened by Shelley as a commercial rival. But all of that is to say that this is a feast, this Penguin Classic. Whenever you get a Shelley volume that's this big, I think page count wise, this is probably as big as the modern library that combines Shelley and Keats, and that will often happen. That you will have Shelley and Keats combined, and so a volume this big that is all Shelley and that has tons and tons of notes. The notes go on forever in the back, explaining everything that you might want to explain. That's great. I don't think that Shelley's prose is anything to write home about, but it's here in its majority. So if you are curious about his precocious atheism or his precocious literary criticism or his precocious political criticism, well, the bulk of it is here, and the bulk of the poetry is here, and including the volume also includes whole versions of a handful of works. So as far as a Shelley volume to have, this really is it. I don't know of a better one that is so easy to hand and that might be in your bookstore. So your Penguin today is a recommend, of course. Of course, I recommend Percy Bysshe Shelley. I would like a new biography of him. It would be great if we got a big new biography of him sometime soon. That would be wonderful. I have had my share of big new Byron biographies. I always wish there were more, but only because I love reading what new biographers will do with him. Not because when I read a new Byron biography, what I really want is for people to read Byron, and they don't. No matter how many biographies there are, they don't. But Shelley is a different thing. Shelley speaks to generations. He manages to speak to the young and new generations. So a new Shelley biography would be great. But in the meantime, your Penguin today is a recommend. It's romantic poetry at its very most refined, and it's unsellably refined. And the author did everything right. I mean, he wore his hair just so. He wore his clothing just so. He was generous with his money. He was weird and one hair shy of disreputable in his personal life, and he had the good grace to die early, so to die very young in a very picturesque way. You can't ask much more of a romantic poet, I guess. Once again, you would come to Keats, but we'll get to him, I'm sure, in time. So that is your Penguin for today. It's romantic poetry, following hard on the heels of Graham Greene and his martinis for lunch. So who knows what it'll be tomorrow? No idea. We'll find out together. I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.